All right, so in order to get your new repository going for your Capstone coding project, what I want you to do is go to github.com, then click on the little plus button at the top and click New Repository. Okay. Inside of here, you can call it whatever you want, but what I would recommend you call it is something like Major Project, say. Okay. So if you create a new repository, call it Major Project, make sure it's public, and inside the description here, you can just say something like CS30 Major Project is fine. You can give me more details later, but just because I want to keep this usable for everybody, I'll just make something like that. And then finally, click on the little Add a README file button right there so that it initializes the repository. Okay? And if you want, I think I talked about like I use unlicensed, but if you want, you can choose a license. I'm not going to bother for this one right now, which means that by default, it will stay licensed to you. And then just hit Create Repository. Okay, so now what you should have is it'll be inside of whatever your GitHub username is, /major project is going to be the thing. And in here, what I'm going to ask you to do is I'm going to ask you to add a new file right off the bat. So I want you to click on Add File and Create New File. And then what I would like you to call this is proposal.md. Okay, so I'll just zoom in on that so everyone can see it. It should look like this, proposal.md. By the way, MD, so I showed you some people's proposals before. And really, all that the MD stands for is Markdown. It's a simple way to write text that can get converted into something nice on GitHub. So I'll just quickly show you how that works. So for example, if I put a single hashtag and then I said like project proposal, if you were to click on preview, you're going to see that project proposal is going to be like in big letters. So that turned into an H1 for me automatically. Then if I want to, so let's say I would put in like my description here. So maybe 2 hashtags and I'll type description. And I'll say something like whatever, enter the description of your project here. So whatever it is that you're going to build, put that underneath something called like description or whatever. And then what I want is, what are the other 2 things that are required in the proposal? Anyone remember? Yeah, you got it. Need to have list and nice to have list. I need to know what are the things I have to have for a minimum viable product. So again, I'm going to do 2 hashtags and just say need to have list. And then I'll say like, I don't know, working character and I don't know, score system. I'm just randomly generating some idea in my head here. Obviously, you'll pick whatever is useful for you. And then I'm going to do 2 hashtags again, and I'm going to say nice to have list. And again, these are things. Now what you're listing once more is just the idea of what would I like to have as part of my project, but that isn't strictly required in order to make the thing work. So maybe I'll say like sound effects and simple AI, etc. Okay? And if you were to look at the preview, what this is going to look like in my proposal, this should look really familiar. This is like what the other proposals that we looked at together from previous students, what they looked like. So it's going to nicely make that text look nice on GitHub. And again, it should just look something like this. If that's working for you, give me a thumbs up there. Okay, wonderful. So again, if you're unsure if it's doing what you want, just click on the preview button there and you can see that it's looking okay. Once you're happy with whatever you've built, and you don't necessarily have to do this yet, you can feel free to keep going on the proposal. You can also edit it after. But what I will do, in fact, maybe for now, you can just hit commit. So do this one down here, hit commit to new file, the big green button here. So click on that. And now inside my project, you're going to have two different things. You have a README and a proposal.md. And what I'd like to do is I just want to show you how we can get this working on our local computer as well. So right now, if you click on this big green button that says code, and I just want you to hit open with GitHub Desktop. Okay? Now what should happen is you should have GitHub Desktop pop up, looks like this, with an automatic thing that says clone a repository. And you want to say, yep, clone. And it doesn't really matter where you save it, so you can change where it is into your M drive if you want. I'm just going to leave it on my C drive and hit clone. And now we have a local copy. So if you look up here, mine says major project. So we have a local copy of what you were just doing on GitHub. And if you're unsure if it's working, you can hit open in VS Code here. And if you do that, what you should see is now here's that proposal.md that we were just playing with, and my README file if you want to update the README as well. If that all works for you, give me another thumbs up there. Okay, I've got nearly everyone. Awesome. If you're having trouble, I'll come and help you in just a second. So hopefully that's all making sense to you. So now what I'd do is I would just take the template file. So if you have already started, if you've built this and you're like working off your 2D array assignment, you can just drag your 2D array assignment into your project here. So I'd hit Show in Explorer, and it's going to show me where this thing is here. And if I just open another File Explorer tab here, and I'll go to like my class demos folder, all I would do is I would take the template folder, I'd go into my template, and I'd select all this stuff, and I'd copy it, then go back into my major project, and I'd just paste that all in here, like this. And it asks me, do I want to get rid of the README? Nah, I'm going to skip that file. We don't need that other README from the template. Okay, in which case now I've put all of that template stuff inside my major project. So again, just to make sure that everyone's with me, on the GitHub Desktop app, you should now see a bunch of files that have changed. And if I were to open this repository in VS Code, so if I hit repository and open in VS Code, what should happen is you should be looking at something like this on the left-hand side, where now I see all of these assets, like my VS Code folder, my assets, CSS, JS, etc. And if I go into JS here, just like we had before, ESLint should still work because that was part of that template. In other words, if I screw something up and I like don't put a space in, it should warn me that that's the case. Okay? So hopefully all that's working for you. Now that you have everything there, you can begin working on your project. And again, the idea would be every time that I'm finished creating something, I'm going to put a nice summary inside of here in my GitHub Desktop. So here I might say like initializing repository with template or something. And I'll commit that to the main. So again, hitting that to the main branch. And then I'm just going to push that up to the origin. And again, I want to make sure that I do that each day at the very minimum. Now, because we're working for quite a few hours at a time, it very well may be that you have multiple commits throughout the day. So maybe you finish making a particular feature and you're like, hey, awesome, I want to save that as like a step. Then just go to GitHub Desktop, type in your summary, like got WASD working or whatever, and then hit commit to master and push that up to the origin. Now on GitHub, my project should look like this, where I see my README, I see my proposal, and all of my template files. Okay? So that's essentially what we want to do in order to get ourselves going. Now, one last thing that I want to talk about here, and that is if you would click on the settings button, so go back to GitHub for a second if you aren't there right now. So again, the way I got here is from GitHub Desktop. I just clicked on View on GitHub or Repository and View on GitHub. And once you're here, I just want you to click on Settings there. And the reason I want you to do this is if you were to scroll down in Settings, until you get to this GitHub Pages part right here. GitHub Pages is the thing that by default was happening already on your previous repository, which is why we had access to it online as a website. We're going to do that here as well. So under source, I'm just going to say that main is my source. So the branch main, and it's just going to be my root directory. So branch main and root, and you can just hit save. Yep, I sure can. So if you scroll down from settings and scroll down to get to GitHub desktop down here, you just want to, under source, choose main and then root and hit save. Okay? And now what that says is, in my case, it's saying your site is ready to be published at whatever location right here. And that's basically all you need to do. Now, if we were to go here, you would see that like mine is just an empty site because this is what my template file looked like. But if we had adjusted that, if we'd grabbed our 2D array, now this would be a website with my major project and whatever state it's in. If that worked for you as well, last thumbs up for me here so I know things are going okay. Yeah, lovely. Okay, let's call it good.